I only listen to my real parents. You're not one of them." Darren didn't even look up when he said it, just picked up his plate still warm from the oven and walked to the living room with that slow, smug confidence only teenagers and men in denial seem to master. Owen froze mid-reach for the salad. My niece Wren blinked. On my sister's voice call, the silence buzzed louder than her Bluetooth speaker. Everyone heard it. No one said a word. I stood there with the casserole dish still in my hands, steam rising between my face and the sting behind my eyes. Darren didn't set the table, didn't say thank you, didn't even glance at the person who worked late, picked up his dry cleaning, and spent the last 20 minutes making sure the cornbread didn't burn. Owen cleared his throat. Darren. But I shook my head. It was too late. Too clear. I wasn't his real parent, so I didn't count. I sat down at the head of the table, the seat that used to feel like a place of calm, and suddenly felt like a stranger in my own kitchen. Wren passed me the water pitcher like she was handing something fragile. She's only 13, but she understood the shift in the room before the adults did. "Should I hang up?" my sister whispered. "No," I said. "Leave it on. This is real life, right?" Owen reached for my hand under the table. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold on either. His hand felt hesitant, lighter than usual, as if unsure where he stood too. I could hear Darren laughing at something on the TV in the next room, fork tapping against the ceramic plate I bought last Christmas. My food, my home, my effort being consumed by someone who couldn't even see me as human. I took a bite of the casserole. It was good. He hadn't earned it. After dinner, I didn't clean the plates. I didn't offer dessert. I just stood, excused myself quietly, and walked to the kitchen like I was floating above my own body. I rinsed out the French press the way I always did when I needed to steady my hands. The smell of old coffee grounds the smooth curve of the carafe in my grip, the gentle rhythm of the brush scrubbing glass. It calmed me in a way no words ever could. I ground the beans manually, not for the taste, but for the sound. The soft crunch of resistance, the slow crumble into something new. When the kettle hissed and clicked off, I reached for the chipped mug. The one from my old apartment in Astoria, back when everything in the kitchen belonged to me and no one questioned whether I belonged there. The rim was cracked slightly on one side, but I never replaced it. It reminded me who I was before all of this. Before Owen, before Darren, before every small compromise I made in the name of blended family harmony. I sat on the back step with the mug in both hands. Outside the porch, light glowed against the fence I helped paint last spring. The grass was damp, but the air was still. I used to love these evenings. I used to believe I'd built something here. The truth is, I walked away from a whole life, my condo by the coast, spontaneous trips, boardroom meetings where people actually listened when I spoke. I traded that in for a promise. A man I loved, and the teenage son that came with him. I never asked to be called Mom. I never wanted to replace anyone. All I ever asked was for a seat at the table, one that wasn't conditional or invisible. The coffee was bitter. I drank it anyway. Behind me, I could hear laughter from the living room again. Darren's voice rising above the rest. The same voice that told me I wasn't real. Not enough. And still, I kept showing up. I still remember the morning I signed for Darren's car. It wasn't fancy, just a used gray sedan with enough dents to keep him humble. Owen was supposed to meet us at the dealership, but a last-minute meeting popped up. "You two can handle it," he said. So I did. I signed my name on the dotted line. The loan was in my name. The insurance, too. Darren barely said thank you. He drove off with the windows down, music blaring as if the car had just appeared from the sky. I didn't mind. Not then. I told myself it would mean something, eventually. A month later, I canceled a trip to Costa Rica, one I'd planned for almost a year, because Darren made regionals for soccer, and Owen said we should be there. He needs to know we're all supporting him, he'd said. So I stayed, sat on metal bleachers in a freezing drizzle, cheering beside parents who looked at me like a mystery guest. He never looked up once during the game, not even when he scored. I took him to the DMV, waited 3 hours in that awful fluorescent light while he texted friends and complained about the photo. Owen was too busy with quarterlies, but Darren needed a ride, so I showed up. I kept showing up. And yet every time I asked him to pick up his shoes or take his wet towel off the floor or rinse his cereal bowl, "You're not my mom. You can't tell me what to do." Owen always stepped in. He'll come around. He's just a teenager. But it's been 2 years. 2 full years of walking on eggshells while financing his comfort. 2 years of being polite so I wouldn't be the wicked stepmother cliché. 2 years of smiling while being ignored. Tonight I found his sneakers on the stairs again. I asked him to move them nicely. He stared right through me, then turned back to his game. I picked them up myself and opened the coat closet. I found Ezra in the hallway sitting on the floor with his knees pulled tight to his chest. His face was blotchy and red hands clenched into fists. What happened? He didn't speak. Just pointed. The model airplane we'd spent 3 weekends building together, the one we sanded, painted, detailed with little decals, was in pieces at the foot of the stairs. Wings snapped. Cockpit cracked. The tail shattered clean off. I bent down slowly, picked up a piece of the fuselage. My thumb traced the uneven paint stroke where Ezra had written "Freedom Bird" in thick blue marker. "It was Darren," he whispered. "I told him he couldn't use my headset 'cause you said no more fighting over it and he got mad. He grabbed the plane off the shelf and threw it." I swallowed. My throat burned. I walked into the living room where Darren was sprawled on the couch, shoes on the cushions, controller in hand game, blasting across the screen. "Darren," I said, calm and flat. He didn't pause. "What you broke Ezra's model? The one we built?" He shrugged. "So, it was an accident." "No, it wasn't." Ezra said he cut me off, smirking. Ezra lies. And even if it wasn't an accident, tell your little nephew to ask you for another. That's all you're good for anyway. I just stood there. For a moment, the room blurred around the edges. I could hear Ezra's quiet sniffling from the hallway, the hum of the refrigerator, the rhythmic clicks of Darren's controller. And something inside me shut down. Not from rage, no fire, no shouting. Just a cold, clear switch. I nodded. Not at Darren. Not at anyone really. Just to myself. A silent acknowledgement. He'd spoken his truth. I turned and walked back toward the hallway, past the broken plane, and my broken heart straight into the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I poured a cup of coffee and pulled out a pen. The coffee had gone lukewarm, but I kept sipping anyway. The mug sat beside a yellow notepad, half-filled, no margin for emotion. Mortgage me, utilities me, internet me, car insurance, me streaming services me, phone lines me. Each item I wrote was another thread I had sewn into the fabric of this house, this life, silently, without ceremony, without credit. I stared at the list for a long time. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about clarity. They had treated me like a placeholder, like a convenience, like a stranger offering services for free until I said something they didn't like. But nothing on that list was free. I picked up the phone and called the wireless provider first, asked them to remove Darren's line from the family plan. When they asked why, I said, "He's no longer part of the account I'm responsible for." They didn't need more detail. Next came the streaming services. New passwords. Parental controls locked. Every device logged out and replaced. The internet company said they could suspend service for 2 weeks and review the plan. I smiled. Do it today. After that, I called the locksmith. Change every lock. Front, back, and garage. 4 new keys. It was almost too easy. I opened the folder. Owen never touched the one with the title, documents, insurance cards, tax filings. Everything traced back to me. My name, my credit, my responsibility. They had called me not real, but every record said otherwise. It was like watching the illusion unravel thread by thread. I hadn't lost control. I had handed it over little by little in the name of compromise, of peace, of being liked. But peace without respect is just silence in a nice house. I took one last sip of the coffee, tossed the cold dregs down the sink, and folded the notepad in half. I left it on the counter, visible, deliberate. Let them see where the power really lived. I heard them before I saw them. The sound of the front door handle rattling, then Owen's voice muffled through the glass. "Delora, did you change the lock?" I stayed where I was behind the door, calm. The locksmith had finished less than 2 hours ago. 4 fresh keys sat in my drawer. Only 3 had been distributed. I opened the door 2 inches, the chain still latched. Darren stood behind Owen, holding his phone in the air like it was a weapon. "My phone's not working." "What did you do?" "Service is cut," I said flatly. "You'll need to set up your own plan now." Owen blinked. "Why didn't you tell me?" Darren shoved forward. "The Wi-Fi's out too." "What kind of sick control freak cancels Wi-Fi?" I held up a folded piece of paper and slipped it through the gap. "What's this?" Owen asked, unfolding it. Neither of them spoke for a moment. I knew which line he'd reached. "Call your real parents. I'm not on duty anymore." Darren exploded. "You're crazy. This is my house too." "No," I said. "It's mine. Check the deed." He stepped forward, but I closed the door before he could say another word. The sound of it clicking shut felt heavier than expected, like a weight pressing back into my spine after years of carrying it elsewhere. Owen knocked once more. Not loud, not demanding. More like a question he hadn't worked up the nerve to ask aloud. "I'll be back in an hour," I said, through the door. "If you're here, we can talk." But I'm not opening it again for yelling. Silence. Then footsteps on the porch. One set light confused, the other slower, maybe reluctant. I waited a moment, then walked to the kitchen. The house was quiet again. Ezra looked up from his book at the table. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "I think I finally am." And then I picked up the second list, the one I hadn't shown anyone yet. Owen came back alone. He didn't speak at first, just stood in the entryway looking around like something had shifted, and he couldn't put his finger on what. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was finally noticing it wasn't his silence anymore. He walked into the kitchen and held up the folded note I'd slid through the door. "Seriously?" he asked. "You're kicking out my son over a comment I didn't answer right away." I reached into the drawer, pulled out the notepad, and set it in front of him. It was the first list: mortgage, phone insurance, internet, all in my name. Next to it, I placed the second one, every payment I'd made over the last 2 years. Car registration, co-payments, grocery bills, soccer gear, the last-minute dentist visit Darren had because Owen forgot. I didn't need to explain the math. I didn't ask to be a mother. "Owen," I said. But I was never given the choice to say no either. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked down at the pages again. His shoulders dropped like someone had removed a plank of wood from across his back. "He's just a kid," he muttered. "He's 17, old enough to drive, old enough to scream at me in my own house, and old enough to know I've been footing the bill while being treated like the enemy. I didn't know it had gotten this bad." "No," I said, "because you didn't want to know." He leaned against the counter, staring past me. "You can keep defending him," I said, my voice level. "Or you can finally see what I've been carrying so quietly all this time." The refrigerator hummed between us. He didn't argue. He reached for the second list again, slower this time, and read every line. Then for the first time in a long time, he looked me in the eyes and didn't blink. It was nearly dusk when the knock came. just one soft, like he didn't want to be heard by anyone but me. I opened the front curtain a few inches. Darren stood on the porch alone, no backpack, no attitude, no Owen behind him, smoothing things over. Just him in the hoodie he always wore when he wasn't trying to impress anyone, hands stuffed into his pockets like a boy 5 years younger. I opened the door halfway but left the screen locked between us. He glanced up, then away. "I didn't mean what I said," he muttered. I was just angry. I didn't speak right away. I wanted to give him the same silence he always gave me. The kind that lingers. "You meant it," I said quietly. "And I finally believed you." His mouth opened slightly, but no words followed. For once there was no defense, no eye roll, no muttered insult under his breath. Just that same boy standing in front of the house he used to walk into like he owned it. "You really cut everything off," he said, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. Yes. He looked past me into the hallway. The rug had been replaced. His shoes were no longer in the corner. Nothing of his remained. He noticed. "I don't hate you," he added. "I know I said, but you never saw me either, and that's worse." His jaw clenched, not in defiance this time, but maybe in regret or shame. It was hard to tell. "I miss it here," he finally said. I looked at him through the screen. "You miss what I gave you." "That's not the same as missing me." He didn't answer. Just stared at the ground, then stepped back. His shoes made a soft scuff on the porch wood. One more second passed, then he turned and walked down the steps. I didn't watch him go. I closed the door and locked it behind me. Then I walked into the guest room and opened the top drawer, where the envelope with the keys still waited. I didn't touch Darren's old room. I left it as it was, the posters curling at the edges, the dresser drawers still slightly ajar, the bed unmade. Not out of nostalgia, just out of disinterest. Instead, I turned to the spare room at the back of the house, the one that had once held boxes. I never unpacked the folding cot. Owen swore he'd move one day. The ghost of a life, too, paused to feel like mine. I started small, cleared the floor, rolled out a soft gray rug I bought years ago and never had space for. Then I moved in the desk from the garage, wiped off the dust, and stacked my favorite books in the corner, fiction, memoirs, travel journals from the years before. Everything got so heavy. Ezra peeked in halfway through the process. "You redecorating?" I nodded. Something like that. He helped me carry the small coffee table from the living room, the one no one used except me. We set it near the window, under the spot where the light landed soft and golden in the afternoon. He stood there a moment, watching me sort through an old box of paints and brushes. "You're the only grown-up who says what she means," he said quietly. I looked at him, surprised by how certain he sounded. "I mean it," he added. "You don't pretend." I smiled. Not out of pride, but something steadier. Relief, maybe. Or the slow return of something I hadn't felt in a long time self. "Thanks, kid," I said. "That means a lot." He nodded and went back to his book, leaving the door open behind him. I sat on the floor cross-legged and pulled a blank canvas from the bottom of the box. I hadn't painted in years, but today the quiet wasn't empty. It was clean, clear, mine. I dipped the brush in the jar of water, stirred the pigment, and let the first color bloom. The keys were still in the envelope beside me, but I wasn't ready to hand them out just yet. It was a Saturday morning when he came back. The air was cool and the porch still held the last shadows of dawn. I had just poured my coffee when I saw his shape through the window, taller than I remembered, or maybe just less defiant. I didn't make him knock this time. I opened the door before he raised his hand. He looked at me like someone trying to read a language they'd never bothered to learn. "Can I come back?" he asked. There was no attitude in his voice, just uncertainty. The edge had worn off him. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. Only if you see me for what I am, I said. Not just what I'm not. He didn't move, didn't respond. So I kept going. You don't have to call me Mom. I'm not asking for that. But you do have to respect the woman who kept the lights on while you called her invisible. His eyes dropped to the floorboards. The silence between us was long, but not uncomfortable. Just honest. I didn't realize he said barely audible. No, I replied. You chose not to. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even cold. I had simply run out of space to keep carrying what didn't want to be held. He looked up, opened his mouth, then closed it again. It was enough. I stepped back. Not inside, just away, and I let the screen door settle between us. He didn't ask again. He just stood there a few more seconds, nodded once, and walked back down the steps. I watched him go without bitterness. I knew what I had done, what I had held, what I had let go. Inside, the coffee was still warm, the spare room still mine, and the keys. They stayed in the drawer, where they belonged.